Hello everybody, double bass players, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are starting Suzuki Book 1. This is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. We're just going to do that first section where the phrase sort of comes to a close. You can pizzicato, but we're going to talk about bowing as well. So the biggest thing obviously is well, not obviously, the biggest thing I suppose actually is holding this huge monstrosity of an instrument that we have. You may be following these broadcasts actually with an electric bass, which is fine. You've got the slightly easier job. It's slightly smaller. It's a lot smaller, isn't it? And I'm sure you think it's much cooler as well, but it's not. Anyway, we will argue about that another time. So you've got this huge instrument. You need to support it almost so that you could let go and it won't fall over. Just almost. It'd be impossible really to do that for certain, but approximately, it'll stand on its own for a couple of seconds, and your feet may be for comfort quite wide apart. You may be seated. I've got a seat. It's a tall fold-up kitchen chair that I bought from Amazon for about 20 quid, and it's way cheaper than any bass, the so-called bass seats or chairs that you can get on certain sites. Gear for Music. Ridiculously priced little stools. I like a tall stool. I like to be as similar to a standing position as possible. I just use a stool when I'm doing a lot of rehearsing and everything starts to really ache. But I'm standing up, and I stand up for my lessons so far. I'm sure I'll sit down sometimes. So this huge bass, the back of the bass on the right hand side where that ridges, that's what I rest against my hip, and it balanced there for about 2 seconds. Okay, and it can go forwards or backwards, and that means you're on that sort of fine line of not being too far back and where it's going to hurt your arm, and not being too far forward where it's literally going to fall over. So I've got my hand on the neck. If you go to the top of the where the neck meets the head, right, and you just place your hand on that, if you get to know where the spacings are for your notes, the first space and then the second space, that's quite a good measurement if you know it off by heart. What I tend to do is put my thumb and my forefinger on the top there where the string meets the head, and gently sort of make the correct shape that I know for a whole tone, and you just get to know it, and that's pretty much where I assume my forefinger has to go. So I put my forefinger there now. You'll get to know this. I promise you. I absolutely promise. This becomes so instinctive after a few months. It actually doesn't take very long, depending on how much you practice. Of course, it's all about practice, isn't it? So I'm in tune. I've used an app which is never very good. They're notoriously inaccurate. So it is much better to use either your ear or some cheating ways. And I've got cheating ways. You can use, let me just get my bow, harmonics. So I'm probably a little bit out there. Okay, so the bass notes are right, the top's a bit out. I've got to pause in a minute and sort that out. I will do a whole session on finding these harmonics, because they are a bit tricky to explain in a podcast. It might be something that I have to do for the members actually in the subscription channel, because that's where you get all the videos basically. So I've got my mirror in front of me, which is always there. sometimes I'm not looking at it because I'm looking too hard at the music, and sometimes something's in the way. But I check in. I'm always checking in. I just lean a bit and check what's my arm doing with that bow. It's much harder to bow than it is to pluck. But I'm really definite that bowing is by far superior for the depth and width of sound that you can get out of this instrument. The music, the range of techniques that you get with a bow are much greater than you will get from pizzicato. That's plucking. So I do, and I teach with a bow because I love a bow. I'm used to it. So let's look in the mirror and just check that everything's our back straight, and we'll do the bow in a minute. Actually, I'm going to pizzicatos because I think it's a bit easier for people who've never played anything before. I'm going to play this first line, right? And let's just listen before we start the lesson, shall we? Okay, so that's on my iPad. I have my music in front of me, and these are the play-along sessions that you'll get for free if you sign up to the school. Everything that we do has a play-along version online, and in the school there's a PDF section, there's a film section, and you can get all of these things, and they're just so useful. They really are. Quick tip, actually, the open strings, you can check they're correctly tuned with Away in a Manger. Okay, so that's a really good tip, actually, because Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, we're going to need a finger down, and if our open strings are not tuned, when we put our finger down, we're going to be out of tune. Okay, so just a little tip there. Open. 1 down on the string next door. 4 down. 3 up. Open. Move across, put 4 down. Everything up except that first one. And now we're open. Okay, so open, 1, 4, 1, open, 4, 1, open. So it's quite a good exercise just to do that. Okay, just to know that get your finger used to crossing strings. Now don't forget, when it's open, have your hand ready for the next note if you can. So we're on this open D, no fingers down, but the next note is this first finger down on that G string. Be ready for it, and then you haven't got to travel anywhere. And have after you've done this 6 notes on that with that first finger down, we're going to put all 4 fingers down, all 4 of them, nice and then up. But have all the fingers ready. If you start, if I was to do open here and then have my hand hovering over the D string instead of hovering over the G string, I've got to get in. There's no gap, right? And I've got to cross a string. I've wasted time, and I've wasted. I'll probably panic, So it's like you have to do this massive jump. I mean, it's time for that when we're really good, but when we're not so good, we need to be. You'll see musicians do this all the time. They're already covering for the next step. They're always 1 step ahead. And when you sight read, you have to be 1 step ahead anyway. Or if you haven't memorized music, and I don't memorize music ever, I've got, I forget my kids' names sometimes. I call them the wrong names. You know, I mean, some people are really good at memorising and other people simply aren't. There's a skill to memorising, and you can learn to memorise, but for those of us that don't use memorising as a way of learning a tune, we have one eye on the next bar and sometimes one eye on the next phrase, you know. Sometimes one eye on the beginning of each line of music, you know, however it is. We look for keys, we look for signals, we look for anchors, and that's how we do it. So we're running out of time because I talk too much. Let me do the bow version. Right. Okay, so I'm going to play quite high up in terms of, I'm not going to play down by the bridge. It's really much louder, so I'm coming right up to the base of the fingerboard around about. So 1 across and down, 4 down, 1, and we're going to play an open string and get that hand already moved across and down. Okay, did you get that? Okay, open and across, and we're twisting the bow slightly because we've got to be perpendicular to a different directional string. Okay, and then 1, open. Okay, so all the time we're thinking about where have we got to move to. So when you swap strings, not only have you know, do you need to be aware of where all those fingers are going to go on the string at the top, down below you need to remember to twist that bow slightly as you come across the string. So check the mirror. I'm on the open G and I've got my bow exactly perpendicular. If I kept it in that direction and went to the next string, I would now be pointing in the wrong direction. I have to lift the bottom of the bow higher slightly to come across. As I come across each string, the base of the bow is coming higher or lower. So the first two that are on the left hand side, beg your pardon, are the bow tip comes lower down as I move towards the center, and when I'm doing the other two, the bow tip, when I'm coming back rather, the bow tip goes up. So it's quite hard to explain that in words, but if you look in the mirror, you'll be able to see exactly what's expected of you, and your hand changes position. Everything changes position. So just look in the mirror and practice that a lot. All I'm doing is touching, or I'm you know, jumping from string to string and seeing how I have to, you know, my arm becomes straighter, for example. If I have to go from the first string to the top string, my arm is a completely different shape. Do you see? So you have to think about all this. iServalan.com for all my lessons. Join me soon for the next one.